who here has an Amazon Alexa or a Google Home at home? There's a few hands in there, maybe not as many, but that's what I want to talk about today. So I want to talk about these, I'd like to call them screenless devices, because they're quite different from the kinds of devices and other kinds of voice interaction that you might be used to, such as Siri on your phone. So these are the kind of devices you might have heard about as voice first or voice only interfaces as well. So they are products without a screen that are pitched for the home as well, which is important. So that's how they're sold to us, but what we're interested in our research is the reality. And so that's why I'd now like to introduce you to the Kent family. So the Kent family is a British family of four, Susan and Carl and their two children, Emma, who's about 12 years old, and Liam, around 7 years old. And we were interested in seeing how they would use the Amazon Echo. So we recorded them for a period of a month alongside 4 other households. And then we examined the recordings, and that's what we build our research around. And that's what I also want to do today, is to share some of those recordings with you. So in the first recording, I want to show we're actually joining the Kents for dinner. So the Kents, they're having a dinner here. They're having a takeaway meal. It's Mother's Day on this day, which is relevant, as you will see. And also the takeaway is Susan's choice. The Echo is on a sideboard near the table where they're eating. So, and they've at this point had the Echo for about a week. So bear that in mind. And they often use the Echo for listening to music and also using skills like the Quizmaster and the Beat the Intro. So Quizmaster is a trivia quiz, and Beat the Intro plays a few seconds of a song that you then have to guess. So before I play the clip, just a word on transcripts. So we use these kinds of transcriptions to analyze recordings. We do this because we care precisely about what is being said. And this is a made-up conversation here, but I just wanted to introduce you to some of the things that we use to analyze it. So for example, we use these numbers here are pauses. So this is a 1.5 second long pause. This is a micro pause. So something around 0.2 seconds or so long. This here indicates that talk is overlapping. So actually this hi there and how are you are actually said at the same time. And this means that something is being said, but we can't quite make it out and we can't quite hear it. And then we can also transcribe relevant nonverbal actions like so. So let's play this recording now.
Alexa, beat the intro. Alexa, they beat the intro.
Resuming the music.
Alexa, stop.
Okay, and it continues.
Alexa, beat the intro.
Alexa, play the intro.
You want to hear a station for Beat the Intro?
No, okay, Alexa. No.
Fine.
We played it the other night. The game we played the other night. Skills beat the intro.
Should I?
Alexa, beat the intro.
Right, so now you know what using an Alexa is like, right? So I think it's fair to say that what stands out about this data that I've given you an idea of is that it, really doesn't work very well. And it's about failure really here and how the Kents are struggling to get this thing to work. Actually, in our study, we find that about 30 to 50% of the time, people are struggling and are failing to get basically to use the Alexa in a way that they intend to. So this means failure is really a normal feature, right? And actually it's important to understand how designers can help people, for example, recover from these errors and actually move on. So what I want to do now is take a closer look at what happens when something goes wrong. So let's look at the segment again that I've played to you.
Alexa, beat the intro. Alexa, maybe beat the intro.
Okay, so what's happening here then? Let's step through this. So Susan is trying to instruct Alexa to play Beat the Intro, and there's a bunch of other stuff that's going on at the same time. What she does at the beginning is she announces her intent that she wants to play Beat the Intro, and this occasions Liam's initial "oh no," and then Susan presses on regardless with her instructions saying Alexa beat the intro, and in turn we get Liam making his disapproval very clear, don't we, about the prospect of playing Beat the Intro. And then about 0.6 seconds into Liam's no, we get Carl saying it's Mother's Day. And that's interesting, because what Carl is attempting to do here, of course, is to get Liam to comply with what Susan is doing with the echo. So this idea of, after all, it's Mother's Day is a recourse to social norms. And norms come with rights and obligations. In this case, because it's Mother's Day, it really is Susan's right to decide to play Beat the Intro. And it's Liam's obligation to play along with that, whether he likes it or not. So the point is that there's a lot going on here at the same time, and all of this is embedded in the social goings on in the everyday life of the Kent family. And then Susan also then kind of seamlessly switches to from addressing Alexa to then telling him to eat up, to say to Liam, you need to keep on eating your orange stuff. So Susan is, very easily switching here between using Alexa and parenting, if you want, doing parenting activities. And then what follows next is this joke that is coming up here between Carl and Emma and Liam as well, about Susan's turn of phrase when she said, keep on eating your orange stuff, and your green stuff, and your brown stuff, and the yellow stuff, and the meat stuff. Yeah, so this is all happening as part of this interacting with Alexa. So the point that I'm trying to make is that voice interfaces are designed with a single user in mind, but actually in the real world things are different, and there's a lot going on at the same time. And we call these kind of multi-activity settings, and these are really the norm. And these settings really create design challenges for voice interface designers. Okay, so moving on from that, what I'd like to do now is take a look at two kinds of failures that go differently. So this is from a different moment later on, where they're trying to start a quiz. And let's especially have a look at how Alexa responds and how the family deals with the trouble in that response. So again, let's listen to this.
Can you ask for a normal quiz?
Alexa, set us a family quiz.
Sorry, I can't find the answer to the question I heard.
Alexa, set a family quiz.
Sorry, I don't have the answer to that question.
Alexa, please set family quiz.
I wasn't able to understand the question I heard.
Alexa, family quiz.
Okay, so they do eventually get the Quizmaster skill open at some point later. But for now, let's just have a look again at how this plays out. So we've got Susan starting this here with the instructions set as a family quiz. And then if you look at the response is, I can't find the answer to the question I heard. Well, so the response categorizes what Susan said as a question, really, not as an instruction. And this is important because talk is sequentially organized, and one utterance follows another. And a present utterance allows a person to take a future one, right? But in this case, there's an error message here, but it's really not very clear how to proceed from that error and to recover from it. And so what happens next is Emma really doesn't have many places to go after this, and she sort of repeats the instruction with a slight variation. It's something we see very often when people are trying to deal with trouble. Again, Alexa responds with this miscategorization. I don't have the answer to that question. And you can see where this is going. Although when Liam actually turns this into something that's amusing when he says, please set us a family quiz. But again, the response is not very helpful here from Alexa. And finally, an even more pared down attempt by Carl to sort of, narrow it down to the sheer essence when he says, Alexa, family quiz. So the point is that if you look at these turns here, that what you see is family members working together to try and get this device to work, but the response being unhelpful and effectively not helping the family to recover from the problem that's occurring and moving on and sort of being stuck here. So we could say that responses from Alexa are treated as resources by users for further action, right? And this is quite important. So when Susan says, Alexa, set us a family quiz, and Alexa responds, I can't find the answer to the question I heard, then that's not very helpful and doesn't really give Susan resources to move on with her request. And she might have even thought something like, that wasn't even a question, not sure what to do next. So, okay, so let's look at a slightly different and final piece of data here. Another way how this can turn out. So this is something we heard already, but I'll play it again to remind you.
Alexa,
Is it cookie?
play the intro.
You want to hear a station for BB intro, right?
No, again, Alexa. No.
Alright.
Okay, so how's this different? Well, Emma instructs Alexa to beat the intro, but let's have a look at Alexa's response and what it lets Emma do next. The response actually incorporates a transcription of what was heard, which is BB intro, which is of course a mistranscription, so it's an error that has occurred, but it's being made visible and it's being made hearable to Emma. And as a result, building this into the transcription and offering also this candidate next action in the form of a question. So, the action being to hear a station and asked as a question, right? Actually just allows Emma here to very clearly and very quickly say no. No, I don't, Alexa, no. So it allows Emma to move on and make the next move, and then the sequence is sort of drawn to a close when Alexa just responds, all right. So although it's not successful, they manage to move on and close the interaction if you want. So the point here is that the response design we've seen in that last example is quite different from the previous one in that it gives users the interactional resources to move on and sequentially to do the next action and actually to progress with what they are trying to get done. So it seems important to consider then that or how to explicitly design these resources and embedding them in responses. And so responses enable certain kinds of possible next moves in the sequence, and as designers, then they need to think about how responses enable this progressivity to move on towards getting something done with the device. Okay, so concluding, what have we learned? Well, we learned that for voice interfaces to become truly embedded, they need to be able to better cope with these sorts of social multi-activity settings, such as a family. We know that talk is sequentially organized, and what I try to show in this talk is that responses are resources for next actions or next moves. Thus, you can start to think about responses as or your responses should be carefully designed to enable people to move on towards getting something done towards the goal they have. So overall, my talk should have shown you that voice interaction design really has quite a long way to go, so don't let the marketing fool you. And what I presented is based on this Kai paper that's available for download if you're interested, or email or tweet me as well. Thank you very much.